Morning, a string of problems at airports across the country. Safety in our skies is important, but a pat-down of a 6-year-old, some say the TSA has taken it too far.
You may need to continue this because Karen and I are continuing our argument from the break. Air traffic controllers, by the way, we're not arguing about this. Sleeping on the job, it's a problem that's happening all too often. Here to weigh in on these issues, legal analyst Sunny Hostin, aviation security expert Billy Vincent. Good morning to both of you. Billy, let's start with you. Air traffic controllers, asleep on the job. I'm of the mind that we are overcomplicating this conversation about having extra air traffic controllers and people resigning from the FAA. Sleep on the job, you get fired. Why is it any more complicated than that?
Well, it probably isn't. And having been a controller, I'm embarrassed by what's happening. And there's really no excuse for that. I work those shifts and a mid-shift every other week for 15 or 16 years and never encountered that problem. There has to be something else afoot here.
Do you think, Billy, they're talking about putting another $161,000 a year air traffic controller in the tower with them, and we were sort of yesterday saying, is that just really expensive babysitting? Shouldn't there just be policies in place where you don't go to sleep on the job?
Well, as I say, there is something underlying all of this that is a major problem. It's not, the solution is not to add another person, as you say, a babysitter. That just doesn't make sense.
The other question, and we have Sunny here about this, and you're a lawyer. What about the legal implications of this? I mean, in the latest incident, I mean, this was a medical flight that was coming through. They said the patient was in bad shape. They had to circle for an extra 16 minutes. I mean, if that patient, worst case scenario, died or health was affected because of that, I mean, is the FAA liable?
I would think so. I mean, there's significant civil liability. Not only the FAA, but certainly the person that's asleep would also be civilly liable. No question about it.
Interesting.
Billy, what's the issue here? There's a sort of a larger percolating issue that I know you've got a view on about air traffic controllers. Is there something that has fundamentally changed over the last several years with either air traffic control or air traffic controllers?
Well, there's two things that have changed. One is the FAA changed it, rather than changing air traffic control to a private organization, which everybody opposed in the Congress, and I personally opposed. They set up a different organization within the FAA and brought in outside heads, in this case, 2 pilots. That was a part of the problem. The other part of the problem goes back for several years now, and having to do with the amount of control a union has over the scheduling and the activities of an air traffic control from a management standpoint. A lot of that was given away in the 90s, taken back in the early 2000s, and then given away again in the most recent administration, which is pro-labor. In other words, they shot themselves in the foot.
Well, certainly the management and sort of the trajectory of the air traffic control system and the FAA under the microscope, no question, because, you know, nobody wants to be on a plane that's circling and circling and circling because you can't reach the tower. I want to just switch quickly to Billy, and I'll ask you first, this 6-year-old being patted down. We've seen a couple of different videos that have surfaced, and parents who've been saying that their very small children have been patted down. This is a particular video. I think this was, I can't remember if this was in Knoxville or where this was, but this little girl was 6 years old. She was crying. They had to calm her down. She said she didn't want to be touched, but she'd gone through the electronic imaging machine, and something had come up, and she had to be patted down. Is the TSA doing this properly? Is it really necessary to pat down a little girl on a domestic flight?
Well, first, 4- and 5-year-old children have been used to move grenades and guns through screening points, and that happened in July 4th in 2000 in Amman, Jordan. And the father of those children subsequently tried to hijack the airplane and was killed by an air marshal, but the grenade in his hand detonated and injured several people. So it is a legitimate concern. But this case, over the day before yesterday, I believe it was, appears to be a TSA screener acting on a standard process without the option for any independent judgment. And the TSA head, John Pistol, has been trying to solve that problem, but is constrained by congressional constraints.
Yeah, and they say that they can't take a cookie-cutter approach to this. But, Sonny, if this little girl's parents are saying she was traumatized by the incident. They're saying that, you know, she was very upset because you teach your children that strangers aren't supposed to touch you, and then in these cases, Strangers are touching them. So what are your rights?
Don't you think that's a little unfair characterization? These aren't strangers. These are security people.
Strangers are touching your to the
then
child.
you got to teach your kids that strangers can't touch you except law
I'm
enforcement
not troubled
officials.
by this. I'm not troubled by this from a legal perspective. I mean, the bottom line is flying is a privilege, not a right. If you don't want to be screened, then you don't fly. You drive your minivan to Disney World as opposed to flying. I'm just not troubled by it at all, and the law isn't either.
Is it really necessary, though, because of an event that happened 10 years ago in Jordan? Is it necessary for thousands of
I think it's like these.
But look at this video. I mean, everyone has seen it. She wasn't really groped. It wasn't a sexual assault by my view.
I'm certainly not characterizing it as a sexual assault. For me, it's not. For me, it's more the question of, are we really being smart when it comes to security?
Well, Billy, you have something to say about that.
Are we doing the smart thing by holding up and treating everybody as a one-size-fits-all approach?
No, we're not being smart. And John Pistol and others, and me personally, have argued for years that we need to do more in the way of risk management, which means applying profiles. But the moment you mention profiles, people think racial. But that isn't the case in aviation. But we've got to get around to doing that, and the profiles work.
Right.
10 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 were identified by a profile, but we had a flawed security measure put in by the FAA and the airlines. Profiles work. We ought to get around to doing that and avoid having to do this.
But they don't work legally, though. They don't work legally.
But you just said it's a privilege. But you just said it's a privilege to fly.
But you can't racially profile people. So
he didn't say racially. He said profile.
Well, when he said profile, though, he talked about sort of the racial makeup of the composition.
No, I did not. That is what is wrong. The moment you mention profiles, people immediately think racial. In aviation, you do the profiles by a computerized process. You do not collect race. You do not collect religion. Therefore, you cannot apply a racial profile in aviation security.
What is the profile made up of, then?
One-way tickets paid in cash, that kind of stuff, right?
No, it's made up of about 15 or 20 different elements, and they work. Are
any of the elements racially based?
No, they are not racially based.
Not even one. Because,
and I don't think any of the elements are 6-year-old children either. But I mean,
but the fact is, if a 6-year-old, a small child, as he said, did once do it, then I think we have to accept the fact that it's possible that a 6-year-old child,
a 6-year-old child taking off from a domestic flight in the United States, that's never happened.
Look, women have been used to put bombs on airplanes. Old women, young women, you use whatever necessary to beat the security system. Our adversaries are very, very innovative, and they're smart. They will look at holes in the system and exploit those holes. So we have to have, first we got to go back to a risk management system.
It's interesting, though. I'll say, and I think you guys will agree, that it seems like what we do is what has already happened. We don't do things that haven't happened yet, and so that's the other thing. I mean, they're very smart. They're going to exploit holes in the system. Then we'll come up with something for it after it's already been exploited. I mean, that's just the way it feels as the traveling public. Yeah.
That's not quite correct. We think in the system, and have for years, in advance of what our adversaries may do, and try to anticipate that and close those holes. The problem is we're dealing with an arcane system that you see some of it, but most of it you don't know about.
All right. Certainly so many different fascinating angles. Billy Vincent, Sunny Hostin, thank you guys for a really interesting discussion this morning.
Good discussion, man.
Thank you.